Good morning. So, a spiritual person does not need a lot of rules and regulations. And I'll explain why not in a minute. But first of all, what's involved in being a spiritual person? Well, Jesus told us in Matthew 5, the Sermon on the Mount, happy are the poor in spirit. Other translations say, how blessed are those who know their need of God. And others say, happy are those who know their need for God, or happy are those who know they are spiritually poor. So how do we become a spiritual person? Well, in 1 Corinthians chapter 2 and verse 14 and 15, a man who does not possess the Spirit refuses to accept the truths which the Spirit of God gives him. Such a man regards them as nonsense. He cannot understand them because a man needs the Spirit rightly to evaluate them. The man who has the Spirit can rightly evaluate everything. So a spiritual person needs to evaluate his life, what he's taught by religious leaders and so on, but on the basis of what? Well, Paul goes on to say, can anyone know the mind of the Lord? Can anyone instruct him? No, of course not. But we do have the mind of Christ. So a spiritual person will examine the life of Jesus Christ. He will look at Jesus' life, his instructions, the way Jesus did things, and evaluate his own life and what he is taught on the basis of what Jesus did. Now, if we go to Romans chapter 8, I'll give you an example. Romans chapter 8 and verse 8, where it says that it is impossible for those who are ruled by their lower human nature to please God. But you are not ruled by your lower human nature. You are ruled by the Spirit. Now, as an example, at the end of the book of John, Jesus, the resurrected Jesus, had a charcoal fire ready for his disciples with fish and bread nearby, because they'd been fishing all night and not caught anything, as you know. And so he called them in with their recent catch of fish and said, look, take your breakfast. They needed food, but what they needed more was the comfort that Jesus had been resurrected and that he gave them instructions afterwards to carry on his work. So we need physical things, we need food, but it's not the main focus of our lives. We don't work very hard to support a champagne and caviar lifestyle. Occasionally you might like to do such a thing if you have the wherewithal. So let's get back to this point of a spiritual person doesn't need rules. Now, why not? Well, if we go back to 1 Corinthians, you notice that Paul said we need to evaluate things. Now, Jesus did give us laws. He said we were to exercise justice, mercy, and we were to be faithful. Now, if we have a set of rules, we don't have to evaluate how to be just, how to be merciful, or how to be faithful. We just follow the rules. So your mind and your heart are not involved. You just do what you're told. For example, the Sabbath rules that the Pharisees dreamt up. They ruled everything from what you could pick up, how far you could walk, and so on and so forth. So when Jesus came, it was a real shock to them because he evaluated what was needed, first to obey the Sabbath laws and then to fulfill the needs of being merciful and faithful to God. And so he healed people. He didn't go against the Sabbath law. He evaluated for himself what was right and what was wrong. So if you need a set of rules to say, oh, you should be doing this, that, and the other in order to be just and merciful, then you are not a spiritual person. A spiritual person stands on his own 2 feet, reads the Gospels, reads the life of Jesus, and evaluates his life on the basis of that. Our lives are focused on living a life with God and Jesus by our sides. We know we need physical things, and we will spend time filling those needs. But our main focus is on the life of Jesus and how we can fulfill these principles of justice and mercy. So that's just something to think about. But thank you for watching. If I can turn this